Hey guys, welcome to Hooked, the Kayak Anglers Resource, episode 4. Today we want to talk a little bit about tournament angling. We're going to have Mason Brock, which is one of our pro staffers, in here in a little bit. He's going to talk a little bit about his journey and kind of how he got into it. But Johnathan, we haven't talked much about how you got into it, buddy. How did you get into tournament fishing? Or I guess first, how did you get into fishing? And then what led to kayak fishing?
Yeah, so it's really cool hearing from Mason Brock. And, you know, before this episode, we heard from Robbie, and you got two guys on both ends of the spectrum as far as tournament fishing. A lot of people don't realize that there's tournaments out there for kayak anglers. There's a lot of guys that fish out of kayaks, and that's kind of how I was. You know, I got my first kayak. It was an Ascend from Bass Pro. Nothing wrong with the Ascend. It's not a great boat, but it's okay. But I slowly found out that, you know, I wanted to fish tournaments, and I didn't have a bass boat, and you can't compete from a kayak out of that point. So I guess the first one that, you know, I heard about was kayak bass fishing, the national
KBF,
the national trail that they have and do. And I really figured that was kind of out of my reach. And then come to find out, I found out there were some local clubs here in Missouri that you could fish. You can get onto Tourney X is a huge resource, and you know, Dwayne's helped us, and he's helped us set up the Big Bass 250, and appreciate his help on that. But that is a huge resource as well to just get into fishing tournaments, not just kayak fishing. They have so many different types of tournaments on there available for you that you can fish, whether it's an online and you fish your local waters against maybe other people in your area, your region, across the U.S. Once you really get on there and dig and figure out the clubs that you have in your local area and also the other options of tournaments, it's really mind-blowing, and it makes sense why this sport is growing the way it is.
You know, I couldn't agree with you more. You know, another thing that I have told anglers, and I've even, at some of the shows we've done and some things, I've talked to some actual bass boat guys that are doing tournaments and just asked them if kayaks could get in. And you know what? If you live on a lake anywhere in the country and there's a weekly tournament or something, you know, a lot of those guys have no problem with letting kayakers in it. They see it as a disadvantage and because of speed, of course. But as long as you can, you know, follow the rules and have an aerator so you keep your fish alive and do those things, there's just a lot of opportunities for guys. I know a couple of our guys around here, Lance Burris, fished the Big Bass Bash, which is a monster tournament with, I think they had nearly like 3,000 anglers in that thing this year, and it's a boat tournament. But he figured out what he had to do to be involved and has a lot of fun doing it. So, yeah, man. You know, you can look around. I know I follow on Facebook. I follow the Peach State and anglers and the guys out there at Niska and in Arkansas, and they have some great trails, man. And we're lucky enough here to have Moyak and KMO both that are both really good trails. You know, I know you guys are doing the KMO event here at Pomme de Terre this weekend. Good luck on that, and excited to see, you know, what we can do there. And then the All-American is kind of another step up where now if you want to do some more traveling and get out even further, it's just kind of neat how you can just keep on progressing. So when you started, how many years, when did you start your first tournament?
So this year would be my 4th year. I actually started out with Camo and started fishing them, and I've heard about Moyak. And so that first year, I figured I would dabble in both groups and just fish it and just, you know, see what I liked, see what I didn't like. And, you know, ultimately now I fish more Moyak than I do Camo. And that's just me feeling like I think Moyak is a more competitive group. And I think Camo is more of a, you know, they get a lot of beginner people. I think each group has their benefits and whatnot. And so that's totally preference on how and what club you want to fish. And I think that's nice having multiple clubs in a state. Maybe your state only has one. But, you know, just the hardest part is realizing that information's out there, right, that opportunities for you. And you know, we talked about Tourney X, but, you know, they even have bank fishing tournaments. They have guys in boats that fish tournaments. There's a number of tournaments that are set up that you can, if you really dig into the time and do the research, you can fish just about whatever you want.
Yeah, and, I always tell guys, too, from the deer hunting world or from, some things I've been involved with in the past, even just picking a tournament you're going to do annually just with your buddies, if you decide that, maybe you don't want to do the full trail and you're not worried about AOI or AOI points and all that, man, you can have a lot of fun just saying, you know what, we're going to go to Lake of the Ozarks every year and do that tournament with Moyak. We're hoping Big Bass 250 is what you decide to start doing. But if you like Eufaula or Grand Lake or Kentucky Lake or whatever it is, you can find those tournaments out there and just go do them for fun too. The tournaments, that's probably the coolest thing I've seen getting into the tournament side of this is how accepting and how cool the camaraderie between kayakers can be. And the fact that, if you're a everyday guy, you're in the group, if you just show up and do one, you're well accepted into the group. And I know both our groups do well with that. I think it's an important part of it is to be accepted, because I do know in the bass boat, world, it's a little harder to do that.
No, I agree, and I think that's something that we can talk to Mason about when he gets on here. He did both. He started in a bass boat fishing tournaments when he was younger, moved over to a kayak, and he mainly does kayak fishing tournaments now. I'm sure he dabbles in the bass boat a little bit too. But I think we can talk to him and figure out, what he thought coming from those two different worlds, and what would he suggest. The biggest thing is it's tough to, it stresses you out, it puts pressure on yourself to think about going and fishing a tournament and being competitive and proving that you can catch fish. But the cool thing is you can start at any level you want. If you want to say, hey, I've fished for 20 years out of a bass boat and I want to go fish the All-American Series or the Bassmasters or the Hobie Trail, that's an option for you. So that don't be discouraged that, hey, I'm not ready for these big events. Find your spot, start in there and just get. And if you want to fish tournaments, start off small. Do some onlines with the KBF. Every state has one of those that you can do, so you can join that, fish on your own time, on your own water, whenever you have time. If the live events in your state, those weekend events are available for you, maybe find that. Maybe find a smaller club that does that. There's so many opportunities for tournament kayak fishing that I don't think you can go wrong. You can travel as much as you wanted to, or you can stay as close as home as well. I know it's tough with gas prices for us to, go through the Midwest and do the All-American Series, but it's also, that's my next step in the progression. It's, next Midwest Series, then a National Series, and just work my way up and feel like I'm building my ability to fish.
And I think that the next progression of this sport is also, like we have the Wednesday nighters here, and there's a Thursday nighters. I think the next progression of this sport will be, as many kayaks are on the water now, is you're going to start seeing some very regional, every 2-week tournaments, once a monthers, of just groups of guys on Lake of the Ozarks who end up having 25, 30 boats, who guys just fish there on their own personal water that don't want to get into a trail. I can see that starting to happen. And the more boats that are on the water, I think it would be a lot of fun to see people do that. And then, that's kind of where guys end up coming from there. It's almost like, stock car racing, where the guy starts off on go-karts and running his own little local track, and the next thing you know, he's moving up to a stock car. Next thing you know, he's, and I can see kayak fishing doing that as well. But Johnathan is 100% correct. If you're looking for something, it's out there. Call us. All of our information will be at the end, but get a hold of us. We can help you find those things. And I'll tell you what, from, Jeff Mallett and, some of those guys at Paddle and Fin and all those guys, I'm telling you, it's not a competitive world here. We all talk and work together and really just try to grow the sport for the angler. We're really excited about where this sport's going. And we're excited to talk to Mason here shortly about it. So, you guys stay tuned, and we'll bring Mason in.
Yeah, let's see if we can get Mason on here, talk to him about his experiences from the year, and see how that turns out.
Excellent. Hey, guys, we want to welcome Mason Brock to the show. Mason, welcome.
Thank you for having me.
What's up, Mason?
How we doing?
Man, it's been good this year, traveling with you, hanging out. We've gone to Lake Palestine. We've gone to Kentucky Lake, done some of the Moyak Trail here in town. We're going to head to Palmy here this weekend, actually, which, of course, you guys probably won't see this till afterwards, and we can talk about that later. But I'm glad to have you on here, and I'm really excited to have you part of the pro staff, man.
Absolutely. I'm looking forward to it. Everything to come. It's been a couple years in the making, and really looking forward to what's coming up.
So a lot of people don't necessarily come into the store to see us because we do quite a bit of online sales, and most of our, on the Hook, the Kayak Anglers Resource, a lot of them is a forum, so they're new to fishing. Tell us about your overall experience. It's before me working with Travis, just coming to the shop as a customer, not necessarily as one of our pro staffers. Tell us what you kind of thought when that all came to fruition.
Starting off, I just thought kayaks were just, one you straddle and float down the river and flip. Coming in here, new to the whole world of kayak fishing, never knew what it could become. And then talking with Travis over the past couple years and seeing what was coming of it, I just couldn't stop. And sky's the limit from what you can do to these things.
Yeah, and Mason and I knew each other for quite a while, and I knew he was a bass boat guy, and fished quite a bit. And he's one of those guys that when he goes in, which we'll have him talk about his boat here shortly. But, it's really a picture-perfect game for him because when he buys into something, he goes in strong. So why don't we talk about that? Tell him, let's talk about kind of your experience getting into the not only fishing, but then into tournaments and boat selection and some of that kind of stuff.
A lot of things that I've experienced have been trial and error. I have the Autopilot 136 made by Old Town. You can research anything you want on how to deck these things out and trick them out. A lot of things are trial and error. You have to do what is comfortable for you. You might spend a couple $100 to do something and not like it and have to change. As you know, I have the live scope on mine. I've had 3 different mounts just trying to get something usable. For the remote, a lot of people have it hanging on their neck. I can't do that. I had to get a mount mounted on my seat. There's a lot of things that you can do.
Yeah, that's right. What is when did you start fishing tournaments, and how did you make the decision from going to just a recreational fisherman to getting into tournament fishing in your kayak?
I started fishing tournaments probably at 18 in bass boats, and slowly saw this come about 6-7 years ago. Didn't realize how big it would get here. And once I transitioned into the kayak world, I kind of gave up the bass boats and just couldn't wait to get on board and see what we could do with it.
As far as coming into the kayak world from the bass boat world, I don't know personally, I haven't fished enough bass boat tournaments, but there's kind of a stigma between bass boats and kayakers, and it's probably not the best, but it is what it is. It's still fishing. We try to consider ourselves equal, but I understand where the bass boat guys are coming from. They feel they have a leg up. They feel like they have more money invested, more time, this, that, and the other, which it is what it is. But coming from the bass boat community to the kayak community, how does that feel, and which one would you prefer?
That's kind of a loaded question, to be honest with you, because in a bass boat, you can jump in and run anywhere you want. You can go from one side of the lake to the other if your boat will hold enough fuel or can stop and fuel up. Kayak, you really got to focus on one area and learn how to pick it apart. As for attitude of the bass boat guy or gal, you never know what they're going to be like, and sometimes they're going to think they rule the roost, and they're going to just push you right off their spot because I'm in a bass boat.
Yeah, I really feel like the kayak community is a lot more closer knit, a lot more, hey, bud, let's go fishing together. Hey, let's go to my spot. Hey, I'm on them. Hey, you're not. Let's go here. It seems like the kayak community is a lot closer.
I have said that since I started this a year and a half ago. you will have just somebody you don't even know will invite you, like you just said, to come fish their spots, whatever the case may be. At a bass boat, tight-lipped, I mean, it can be arrogant and stuck up, and they might seem like it. They might not be, but they just don't talk. They're not as friendly, saying, hey, come with me.
Yeah, so, from Mason Brock, kayakers, better people. So I'm getting at it. But, I relate kayak fishing to bow hunting, mainly because it's a culture. You find bow hunters, and that's what they do. They think rifle hunting is just easy, and they just, it just is what it is, and they're just diehard bow hunters. Kayak anglers are kind of that way. You got your guys who just enjoy it, but then the guys that are really hardcore, it takes a special kind of guy to go out there and know that you can't cover water.
Absolutely.
And that you can't go hit 16 spots, because you're going to hit Chuck twice and then bust to the other. You're going to have to work.
You will.
And you're going to have to, you got to make things happen a lot. So your first tournament, what were the nerves like?
Through the roof. Wasn't exactly sure what to expect. I knew the location where I was, like the back of my hand. It's a 2-mile long stretch of water, and I knew I was going to pick it apart. Ran out of time. But no, I learned how to refocus that energy, because you don't have time to run and gun.
So I brought up kind of that question because, we just talked to Robbie Brewer about getting into tournaments. This is his first year. You've done this for, a little bit of time now and put in the time and effort. But overall, just the kayak community in general is a closer, tight-knit group, but they're also your best buds. I mean, some of these guys you met at one tournament, had a conversation and just hit it off and fish other than tournaments and together. And that's one of the coolest things about the kayak community in general. It's just the openness and willing to do that. Let's go back to your Autopilot 136, man. Let's talk about that a little bit. That's a pretty sweet boat.
It is. I do feel the sky's the limit. I don't know if there's anything that boat will not do other than go more than 4.3 mile an hour.
Yeah. So let's dig into that. Tell me the top 2 things or your favorite things about that kayak, if you can only pick 2. Of course, it's like I said, it's a Sportsman 136 Autopilot. You've got the GPS transducer. You've got multiple ways of rigging it, and then overall, it's a large platform. But what are 2 things, if someone was looking at that boat, that would be a good selling point for those?
I can't believe you're going to only restrict me to 2.
Just 2, man. If you only got it's a short show.
I'm going to say the lake I live on, Lake of the Ozarks, dead central Missouri pretty much, some of the roughest water you can ever fish. It's a party lake, big giant cruisers. You can stand up on the main lake and fish on a Saturday in the middle of summer. That has to be, the stability is my number 1 favorite. 2, I'm going with the trolling motor. Don't want to pedal.
Yeah.
Spot lock doesn't hurt either.
Spot lock is great.
Yeah. And Minn Kota's known for good trolling motors, and it was a great play by Old Town to put that in there. And so with those two key points, what is the worst thing about that kayak that you wish it was different or you could make better or change?
The back deck. Whether you use a crate or a tote, you're very limited to size. Now, I get it. We're in a kayak. We're limited to size anyway. But it is just very narrow. I wish it was a little bit wider.
Nice. It's good to know. Like I said, that Autopilot 136, especially that 136, it's a huge footprint on the water. There's plenty of storage space. Obviously, it could use a little bit more in the back, but there's probably a lot of guys that are curious about that kayak.
Rightfully so. I mean, it catches the eye as you're driving down the road, even as it's sitting on my trailer. People rubberneck a lot.
They're very hard to come by there for a while too, but I think supply has opened up on them a little bit. But I know you also do some river stuff, and got your new riverboat here last week or 2.
I did 2 weeks ago. I picked up the 106 topwater Old Town. It is a pedal drive, and how I just said I don't like to pedal, somebody talked me into one.
Yeah.
I kind of helped on that because I just got one too for the missus, and she really enjoys that. And I took it out on the river too, and I was rather impressed how it performed as far as the pedal drive and doing that. It was definitely better than having a paddle on the river, which typically, that's the route you go because you don't know what you're going to get into on the river. Talk to us about that boat and just your overall initial impressions.
I've only had that boat on the water one time, and it was a pretty rough day. Weather was bluebird skies, 100 degrees, and we picked a stretch of river where there was jet boats, and it was pretty dangerous. That boat can also handle the water, the rough water, waves. I was very impressed. And if anybody's ever floated down the river, your back end will catch the current in a shoal, and it'll spin you around. That boat didn't do that. I was very pleased with that. You got to keep on the pedals, but I mean, it didn't.
Yeah, I think sometimes Old Town gets a bad rap about weight. And I think that weight helps you at sometimes like that, where that boat just doesn't get blown all over and current doesn't push it quite as hard. I'm in a 106 MK, Old Town, and I often wondered, because I've never been in the 136, what is the stability like? Have you stood in your 106?
I did. I stood several times that day floating down the river, and I'll be honest with you, I didn't know which boat I was in at first because I stood up and it came to mind, oh, I'm in a shorter boat. And I'm like, wait, it was still pretty nice.
Awesome.
So, you're fishing for pro staff and you got a couple tournaments coming up. We've done some of the All-American series, it's kind of been rough, but it's been a good time traveling and getting together with the guys and going to those. We still got Moyak left. We've got 3 or 4 events left. I think Stockton's next on your schedule for Moyak. Is that correct?
It is.
What are your expectations for Stockton? Are you Stockton's known for a windier lake, got smallmouth in it, largemouth, and spotted bass. What's kind of your hope or your expectations for that tournament being middle of summer?
First off, I hope there's not a north wind.
Yeah,
that lake can get rough whenever there's a north-south wind. It's fishing really good right now. I know several people that live over there. I've fished it a handful of times, not a lot, but my expectations are probably just about like anybody that lives over there. Just keep your bait in the water, fish as deep as you can where you have control of your bait, and hope to pull in some of those long smallmouth.
Yeah, man, there's definitely some good smallmouths in that lake.
Yeah.
So a couple tournaments coming up, but what are your thoughts on our Big Bass 250?
That I cannot wait for. I'm very excited. Only 250 get to fish that, is that right?
Yep.
Yeah. That's going to bring in a big crowd. There's a lot of expectation coming. It's the fall. You cannot go wrong with fishing fall in Lake of the Ozarks. Top water, oh my gosh, this is going to be fun.
Yeah. 20K wouldn't hurt either.
I was hoping you weren't going to say I had to work.
You can rig out a 136 pretty good with 20 Gs.
That's an understatement.
Yeah, so being in your backyard in Lake of the Ozarks, you talked about throwing topwater. We had one of your buddies here the other day as well when you were here, and he was talking about fishing a jerkbait in the fall and winter and spring, early spring, and I think that might be a huge player. Do you being Lake of the Ozarks, them having the Big Bass Bash as well out of boats, they pay out stupid amount of money, which is awesome and whatnot, but you also get a crazy amount of crowd.
You do.
When looking at those, do you change up your techniques at all? Do you say, hey, I'm going to throw some big baits, or I'm just going to, stick with what I've got in the areas I know, and hopefully that big one bites?
So from experience of fishing those in the bass boat, I just stuck to big baits. You're fishing for one fish. This one might be a little different because, as we've talked, you're stuck to one area. And I think I'm going to stick to a confidence bait and beat my spot to death.
There you go.
Aggravate them until they hit.
So being a kayak angler and, thinking about that big bass 250, what are some things that you would like to see, given away at the awards and stuff like that? Well, what would be the bee's knees for you to see given away?
somebody that doesn't have the top of the line kayak, just say there was a kayak drawing and he won, to get out of the lower level kayak into a top of the line, just to see a smile on their face. I think that would be top notch.
It would be really cool.
Yeah,
Absolutely. That's what we're doing it for, to be honest with you. It was to get people in it, and that's why it's an open. Anybody can get in it, and that's why we're pretty excited, man, to see some people come out and with just all kinds of boats, and then they get to see what everybody else is in and where they hope to be at some point, and hopefully we can give a few things away that'll really make a difference in some people's fishing career.
right.
I think overall, once this happens, I think it's going to be a destination spot and not so much just another tournament. And that's what we really hope for, is people are putting this on the calendar for year to year, and making that a plan to, putting that on their schedule and making it a mark on there. But I think we're going to knock it out of the park with this and be a great time.
I agree. I think it's gonna draw a lot of attention.
Looking forward to it.
Travis, man, you got anything else for Mason?
Nope. I think the only thing I had, the last question I'd ask him is go-to bait. You got one thing you can pick. What are you going with?
Give me a time of year.
Anywhere, any time of year. What is one go-to bait that you'd never leave home without?
Shake your head.
Shake your head.
Sweet. All right. Hey, guys, appreciate Mason being here. Next week, we'll see if we can get one of the other guys on. We appreciate the time, Mason. Good luck.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Yep. Guys, as mentioned, we had Robbie on here. We got Mason on here. These guys are more than available to you as well. We will make sure and link their Instagram stuff, and that way you can get in touch with them. So feel free to reach out to them if you have any questions. They're on the water, if not more, just as much as Travis and I, and they're a huge resource for you all, and use them as such. So feel free to reach out to any of our pro staffers. If they can't answer the question, they'll throw us our way, and if we can't figure it out, we'll do some digging and get it. But again, Mason, thanks for being on here. Guys, thanks for being a part on here. Make sure you guys subscribe, turn on the notification bells. That way you get a notification every time we get a new podcast out.
Peace.
See you guys.
Hey guys, welcome to Is This Your Kayak? Guys, today we're going to talk about the Old Town Autopilot 120. Also comes in a 136. This kayak really kind of revolutionized our sport, with Old Town using the Sportsman platform and pairing with Minn Kota to come up with a boat that has spot lock and just does everything that the angler needs to do. Bow to stern, you got front handles, rear handles, so easy to get this boat in and out of the water. Has a hatch up front that you can put a battery in, or at least get into your hull to be able to run wiring. Then kind of the star of the show is the Minn Kota iPilot, a stow and go motor. You can from your deck you can raise and lower this thing coming into shallow water. 45-pound thrust. Actually, just a great motor. Moving back into the deck, you've got an EVA decking throughout, so this is super comfortable. You've got 18-inch track system front and rear of this boat. So any accessories, whether that be your Garmin's, your Yak Tech, your Railblazer, whatever you want to put on this boat, it's got a spot for it. Also has through-hole wiring set up on the front so that there's no drilling. This is set up to really progress into anything that you want this thing to be. Moving back to the Old Town seat, which has a high and a low setting. Super comfortable, ready for all-day fishing. Just off to the right of this kayak, you have a completely waterproof compartment. Great place to put your cell phone, anything that you want to just keep 100% dry. It's got it ready to go. Underneath your seat is your battery box. You can put lead acid or lithium in this boat. The nice thing about having that battery right there is it's a very low center of gravity. Makes this vessel very, very stable. Moving on back to the back end of the boat. Of course, you got the other two rod holders. You got a full bungee system. You got a full track system, front and rear, 18 inches on each side, front and rear. Your rudder, which is actually lift and stow. And then, like I said, guys, this boat has changed the industry. This is a super stable boat, super good boat for the fishing community. $39.99. Is this your kayak?